Weapons were banned. That was the whole point. The Galactic Council called it fair. Everyone else called it a funeral with paperwork. They didn't understand one thing about humans. A human didn't need a weapon to be dangerous. A human could turn breath, balance, and brains into a blade. In the upper galleries of the proving arena, the delegates sat in jeweled seats, pretending they were calm. Below them, the floor was a wide circle of black stone, cut with glowing lines that pulsed like a heartbeat. Every trial in this place decided disputes without war. A contract. A border. A prisoner exchange. One champion from each side. No armies. No fleets. Just one body against another. Myra Cade stepped through the entry gate like she belonged there. She wore the standard trial suit, plain, grey, sealed at the wrists and ankles. No pockets. No gadgets. Nothing hidden. Her dark hair was braided tight against her skull, and her eyes stayed quiet, as if she was listening to a sound no one else could hear. Across from her stood the Karu champion, Brack Vaughan. He was tall enough to make the air feel smaller. His shoulders were plated in natural bone ridges. His arms ended in hooked claws made for tearing. Karu were built on a harsh world where the weak didn't get a second sunrise. Brack had the posture of something that had never lost. The council's herald floated above the arena, voice amplified until it vibrated in Myra's ribs. Champions. You enter with nothing but yourselves. No weapons. No outside tools. No mercy requested. Victory decides the dispute. The Karu delegates watched with smug patience. Humans were newer to the wider galaxy. Soft-skinned. Too curious. Too loud in meetings. Too stubborn in negotiations. This dispute had started with a mining lane, an asteroid corridor rich in rare elements. Humans claimed they had surveyed it first. Karu claimed humans had lied. A single line on a star map had turned into insults, threats, and ships drifting too close to each other in silence. So the council demanded a trial. And the human delegation sent Myra. Whispers climbed the gallery. Some laughed under their breath. Some looked away. A few stared hard, like they wanted to memorize the moment before it ended. Myra didn't look up. She looked down at the arena floor. At the angles. At the spacing of the obstacles. At the way the lights pulsed in patterns, like someone had built rhythm into stone. The first challenge rose from the floor with a heavy mechanical groan. A vertical wall of composite material climbed into the air, smooth and cruel, broken only by shallow seams. A line of glowing markers waited at the top. Ascension wall, the herald announced. Touch your marker to advance. The horn sounded. Brack lunged for the wall and slammed his claws in. The composite cracked under his grip. He climbed like gravity was an enemy he enjoyed hurting. Other volunteer champions moved too. A sleek six-limbed Nyran scrambled up using tiny adhesive pads. A crystal-bodied Jex shifted its weight, flowing up in an unsettling glide. They all had natural advantages. All had bodies designed to fight a world that wanted them dead. Myra stood still. For a moment, someone in the gallery snorted. Then Myra inhaled. Deep. Slow. Like she was stepping into cold water. She ran. Not at the wall like a climber. At the wall like it was a road. Her feet hit the base and she took steps upward, real steps, using speed to buy height. 1, 2, 3. Then she pushed away, twisted mid-air, and caught a seam with her fingertips. The move was clean. Not desperate. Not lucky. Practiced. Myra swung her weight, found the next seam, and climbed in bursts, run, jump, catch, pull, breathe. She wasn't trying to out-muscle the wall. She was borrowing momentum, converting it, spending it carefully. Brack heard her. He glanced sideways and his jaw tightened. He climbed harder. The wall shuddered under him. Myra kept her pace steady. Not fast enough to panic. Not slow enough to doubt. Halfway up, her hands started to burn. Composite seams bit into skin. Friction stole heat. Her forearms trembled. But she didn't waste strength fighting pain. She let the pain exist, then moved anyway. She reached the final stretch where the seams disappeared. Only smooth surface remained. The other champions hesitated. Even Brack paused, testing the surface with a claw. Myra stared at the blank stretch and made a small choice. Not louder. Not stronger. Smarter. She shifted her grip, lowered her center of gravity, and swung her legs like a pendulum. Back. Forward. Back. Forward. On the last swing, she kicked off the wall, launched upward, and caught the platform edge with both hands. Her shoulders screamed. She clenched her jaw and pulled. One elbow up. Then the other. Then her knee hooked the ledge. And then she rolled onto the top like she had planned it from the start. Marker touched. Light flared. Myra was among the first to finish. Silence hit the arena like a wave. Brack arrived moments later, claws gouging the platform, eyes fixed on her with something new. Not amusement. Not pity. Attention. Myra stood and shook out her hands. She looked down at her torn fingertips, flexed them, and nodded once, as if confirming what she already knew. The herald's voice cut through the quiet. Ascension complete. Advancing champions, proceed to the combat rings. Combat. Where size mattered. Where claws mattered. Where bone plating mattered. The Karu delegates relaxed again, like the universe had returned to normal. Myra walked to the next gate without rushing. But her eyes didn't soften. They sharpened. Because now it wasn't about climbing. Now it was about survival. And somewhere in the human delegation's booth, an older human officer leaned forward and whispered to no one in particular. She didn't come here to prove she's brave. She came here to prove they've been misunderstanding us. The combat rings rose from the floor, 6 circles of metal suspended above a deep drop, each one wide enough for a fight and small enough for mistakes to kill pride. A screen flashed the first pairing. Myra Cade. vs. Zevar of Thrax. Zevar stepped onto the ring with heavy confidence. Thrax were thick-skinned and jointed, built like living siege engines. Their forearms ended in blunt crushing plates. Their necks were protected by overlapping armor folds. A perfect opponent to break an unarmed human. Myra stepped onto the ring opposite him. No fists clenched. Hands open. Breathing measured. The bell rang. And Zevar charged like a falling building. She hit different. Zevar's first swing was meant to end the fight quickly. A crushing forearm plate swept toward Myra's head with enough force to stun most species in one hit. Myra moved before impact. Not backward. Sideways. Small step. Tiny angle. The difference between being hit and letting power pass through empty space. Zevar's strike whistled past her cheek. His weight carried him forward. For a fraction of a moment, his balance belonged to gravity instead of him. Myra took that moment like it was a gift. She didn't punch his armor. She didn't slam into his thick chest. She didn't try to win a strength contest with a creature built to crush doors. She reached for his elbow joint. Twisted it just enough to change alignment. Then she stepped in, pressed her shoulder into his center, and used his own forward drive against him. Zevar stumbled. Not because she was stronger. Because she made his body argue with itself. The crowd gasped when a human palm struck the side of his neck, right at the thin seam where armored folds separated. Not a kill shot. A nerve strike. A reset button. Zevar's arms jerked. His vision blinked. He tried to roar, but the sound came out broken. Myra stayed close. Close was safety. Distance was where his mass could build speed again. She hooked a leg behind his and pulled while pushing his upper body the other way. Leverage. Opposition. Physics doing the work muscle couldn't. Zevar hit the ring floor hard. The metal boomed. He tried to rise. Myra was already at his side, controlling an arm, pinning the wrist, isolating the shoulder. A lock. A pressure point. Pain without blood. The council allowed injury. It discouraged death. Myra understood that line perfectly. Zevar's armored face twisted. He bucked once. Twice. Then the third time was weaker, because his body was learning something his pride didn't want to accept. He wasn't fighting a fragile primate. He was fighting technique. He was fighting thousands of years of humans inventing ways to win when they couldn't win fairly. Zev slammed his free arm down, trying to crush her hand. Myra released at the last instant and slid away, letting his strength hit nothing but air and ring metal. She rose smoothly, breath steady, eyes locked on him. Zev rose slower, heavier now, because hesitation had entered him. He circled. Myra circled too, but not like a predator. Like a problem solver. He lunged again, aiming to grab her and squeeze until she stopped moving. Myra slipped inside the reach, grabbed his wrist, stepped under his arm, and turned. A throw. Clean. Efficient. Zevar's legs left the ring for a heartbeat. He landed on his back again. His head struck metal with a dull sound that made the arena go quiet. Medical lights flashed. The bell rang again. End of match. Victory by incapacitation. Myra stepped back and raised her hand slightly, not in triumph, but in clarity. She wasn't celebrating. She was proving a point. In the gallery, the Karu delegates stopped whispering. Brack Vaughan stood at the edge of his own ring, watching through narrowed eyes. Not worried yet, but calculating. The next rounds advanced quickly. Champions fell. Pride shattered. A few matches ended in submission. A few ended in unconscious silence. Myra's next opponent was faster. A slender Avori with blade-like elbows and reflexes that made its movements look like flickering light. This time, Myra didn't chase. She waited. She read the rhythm. She let the Avori spend speed like currency. When the Avori finally struck, Myra shifted her stance, caught the limb, redirected it, and stepped into the Avori's centerline. A short strike to the chest. A second to the diaphragm. A third to the base of the jaw. The Avori's eyes rolled. It crumpled. Myra caught it before it hit hard. Not because she feared the audience. Because humans didn't just win. Humans remembered what winning did to someone else. The council observers exchanged messages in frantic bursts. They had data on human strength. On human endurance. On human adaptability. But they didn't have a number for human creativity under pressure. Between rounds, a council medic scanned Myra's hands. Microtaz. Bruising. Inflammation. Pain suppressant, the medic offered. Myra shook her head. No. Why? Myra's answer was quiet. Pain tells the truth. The final pairing of the combat stage appeared on the screen. Myra Cade. vs. Brack Vaughan. A low rumble passed through the arena. Brack stepped onto the ring like a storm choosing where to land. Bone ridges gleamed under the lights. Claws flexed. His breath came deep, confident, predatory. Myra stepped onto her side and lowered her center of gravity. Hands open again. Eyes calm again. The bell rang. Brack didn't charge blindly. He advanced slowly, measuring. He had watched her. He knew she liked angles. He knew she stayed close. So he tried to deny her the space to slip inside. He swung one arm as a feint, then snapped another from the opposite side. Myra moved, but the second strike caught her shoulder. Pain burst bright. Her arm went numb for a second. The crowd inhaled as one. Brack roared, thinking he had found the crack. Myra rolled with the impact, turning the hit into motion instead of damage. She dropped low, slipped under his next swing, and planted a palm against his knee joint, right where bone plates overlapped but didn't lock. She didn't strike. She pushed. Then she pulled the other way. An unstable angle. Brack's knee buckled. Not broken. Just betrayed. Myra surged in and wrapped an arm around his torso, not trying to squeeze, trying to attach herself like a climbing rope. Brack slammed his claws down toward her back. Myra was already moving. She used his body as cover. She shifted behind him. She drove a short strike into the nerve cluster beneath his rib plating. Brack jerked. His breath stuttered. The Karu champion swung again, furious now. Myra ducked. Then, for the first time, she did something the crowd understood immediately. She jumped onto his back. Gasps exploded. Brack tried to shake her off, but Myra had already locked her legs around his waist, her arms around his upper body, controlling his balance like she was steering a machine. "Get off!" Brack snarled in broken common. Myra didn't answer. She didn't need to. She shifted her grip and pulled back on his arm while pressing forward with her hips. A lock. A lever. A clean mechanical trap. Brack's elbow started to tilt into a position it wasn't built to hold. His roars became panic. His pride fought, but his joints didn't care about pride. "Submit," the herald commanded, voice sharp with authority. Brack hesitated. A half-second too long. Myra tightened the lock just enough to make the choice simple. Brack slammed a clawed hand against the ring floor. Submission. The bell rang. The match ended. Myra released instantly and stepped away. She didn't glare. She didn't mock. She just stood there, breathing, while the arena tried to understand what it had witnessed. The Karu delegates looked like someone had taken their favorite story and rewritten the ending. And the herald's voice returned, quieter now, almost uncertain. Combat stage complete. Advancing champion, Myra Cade of humanity. Proceed to the next trial, the maze of truth. Myra walked toward the next gate. Her shoulder ached. Her hands shook slightly. Her breath was still controlled. Because the next trial would not be about fighting. It would be about thinking. And that was where humans truly became dangerous. The maze of truth was not a simple maze. It was a machine built to break decisions. Walls of reflective metal rose and shifted, rearranging pathways with silent speed. The floor pulsed with faint light that changed color depending on where you stepped. The herald explained the rules. Only one path leads to the core. The maze will attempt deception. Reach the core. Touch the beacon. Advance. Other champions had reached this stage too, not from Myra's dispute, but as volunteers who survived earlier rounds in their own categories. A tall Luminid whose body glowed with internal heat. A quiet Sarthan with sensory whiskers that tasted air. A stone-heavy Grawl that moved like a walking cliff. All of them had strengths. All of them looked confident. Myra looked at the maze and frowned once. Not fear. Recognition. She had seen mazes before. Not made of metal. Made of people. Made of threats and promises and false doors. The gate opened. The champions entered. Inside, the world became reflections. Every wall showed a version of you that looked slightly wrong. Angles doubled. Distances lit. The first trap came quickly. A corridor split into three, each one marked with a symbol that translated into common as safe, fast, true. The Luminid sprinted toward fast. The Grawl chose safe. The Sarthan paused, whiskers twitching, then went true. Myra didn't choose any of them. She knelt, pressed her palm to the floor, and watched the light pulse. The pulse wasn't random. It had timing. A sequence. She stood, counted softly in her mind, and stepped forward on the beat. The floor light shifted under her foot, and a hidden seam opened ahead, an unmarked path that none of the signs advertised. Myra entered it. Behind her, the fast corridor flashed red. A wall snapped shut. The Luminid slammed into it and stumbled back, shocked. The safe corridor filled with thin mist that made the Grawl's heavy limbs slow, joints stiffening. The true corridor looked clear, until the floor dropped out from under the Sarthan into a net below. The maze didn't reward bravery. It rewarded obedience to its own story. Myra refused that story. She moved through the unmarked path, watching patterns, listening, feeling tiny vibrations through the soles of her feet. The maze was a machine. Machines had rules. Rules were just puzzles wearing uniforms. A projection flickered on the wall ahead, an image of a human officer in a blood-stained uniform, shouting, "You can't win, Myra. You're not built for this. Turn back." The voice sounded real. The face looked almost right. Almost. Myra's jaw tightened. Her breath stayed steady. She walked past it without looking away, and the projection distorted, angry, then vanished. The maze tried again. This time it showed a different image. People Myra loved, faces soft with worry. "Please," they begged. "Stop." Myra slowed. Pain flickered behind her eyes. Then she whispered, "Nice try." She reached into her own memory and found the difference. Real people didn't speak like a script. Real fear had messy edges. This was clean. Designed. She kept moving. Further in, the maze became physical. Walls shifted fast enough to cut off escape routes. A ceiling panel dropped spikes, not sharp enough to kill, but enough to force movement. Myra didn't outrun the maze. She outthought it. When a wall slid to trap her, she didn't fight it. She stepped into the corner the maze left behind and pressed her back flat, making herself smaller than the designers expected. The wall passed inches from her nose and locked into place. She exhaled, then smiled once. Humans were good at being small when they had to be. It was one of their oldest survival skills. At the heart of the maze, she found a chamber of mirrors. In the center stood the beacon, an upright pillar of light. But between Myra and the beacon stood Brack Vaughan. Not the real one. A mirror-made version, claws dripping with something dark. The fake Brack grinned. "You want the beacon," it growled. "Fight me again." Myra stared at it and tilted her head. Then she looked down. No footsteps. No weight. No vibration. "You're not here," she said. The fake Brack lunged anyway. Myra stepped aside and let the illusion pass through her like smoke. It dissolved mid-strike, flickering into broken light. The chamber fell quiet. Myra walked to the beacon and touched it. Light surged up her arm, scanning her body, reading her pulse, measuring her stress. The council liked to pretend these trials were fair. But fairness was just another word for control. The beacon flashed green. Advance. The maze walls opened behind her. When Myra stepped out, the arena was watching like it had forgotten how to blink. The volunteers who survived emerged too, but slower, shaken, angry, confused. Myra's victory wasn't loud. That made it worse for everyone else. In the council booths, officials whispered urgently. Humans weren't just winning fights. They were winning systems. The herald returned, voice careful now. "Next trial, the silence field." Myra's eyes narrowed slightly. She had heard of silence fields. A place where sound vanished. Communication failed. Signals died. A trial built to isolate you from everyone. To make you feel alone. Myra flexed her injured shoulder. Pain answered. Honest. Useful. She walked toward the next gate anyway. Because humans did not need comfort to keep moving. They needed purpose. And Myra's purpose was no longer just a trade lane. It was making the galaxy understand something simple. If you ban weapons, you do not make humans harmless. You just remove the distractions. The silence field looked empty at first. A flat stretch of pale stone under a dome of shimmering air. No obstacles. No visible threats. That was the lie. Myra stepped through the gate and the world changed. Sound vanished instantly. The arena roar became nothing. Her own breathing became a silent motion in her chest. Even her footsteps were swallowed. A panel on the far wall lit up with the rule. Reach the far door. Carry the core. Do not drop it. In the center of the field, a small sphere hovered inches above the ground, an energy core, glowing faint blue. It pulsed like a living thing. Myra walked toward it, eyes scanning the floor. Silence made details louder. Tiny cracks. Dust patterns. Heat shimmer. She reached out and lifted the core. Instantly, the field reacted. The stone beneath her feet shifted, not visibly, but in pressure. Her balance changed. Like the ground had become a slow wave. Myra widened her stance, knees soft, adjusting like she was standing on a boat. The core pulsed faster in her hands. Then the air itself pushed. A sudden gust slammed into her left side. No warning. No sound. Just force. Myra stumbled, caught herself, and hugged the core tighter. Her fingers screamed from earlier damage. Her shoulder throbbed. She kept moving. Across the field, other champions struggled too. The Luminid's glow flickered as it fought to keep footing. The Grawl nearly dropped its core and barely caught it in time. A Sarthan volunteer crawled on all fours, whiskers flattening in panic. The silence field didn't just remove sound. It removed coordination. No shouted warnings. No crowd energy. No external rhythm. Only you. And the cold truth of physics. Myra looked down at the core's pulse and understood. The core wasn't just a weight. It was a trigger. A signal to the field's hidden systems. Pulse faster. Pressure increases. Wind shifts. Balance breaks. Myra slowed her pace. She matched her breathing to the core's rhythm, like two metronomes trying to agree. Inhale as it flared. Exhale as it dimmed. Calm the pulse. Calm the field. It worked. Not perfectly, but enough. A new push hit, stronger than the last, trying to knock her sideways. Myra bent into it, lowered her center of gravity, and turned her body so the force slid across her instead of through her. She didn't fight the push. She redirected it. Halfway across, the field changed again. The floor turned slick, some invisible film reducing friction. A trap designed for claws and hooves to fail. A trap designed for the wrong kind of feet. Myra's boots slid. Her heart spiked. The core pulse raced. The wind responded immediately, surging to punish her for panic. Myra stopped. Closed her eyes. In the silence, she found a memory. Training in rain, training on ice, training when her muscles hated her. Humans had learned to train in discomfort because the world didn't care what was comfortable. Myra opened her eyes and took off her boots. Bare feet on stone. More grip. More feedback. More truth. She stepped forward slowly, toes reading the surface like fingers. The wind pushed. She adjusted. The core pulsed. She calmed it again. Near the far door, the field delivered its final cruelty. A wall of force hit from the front, straight at her chest, trying to drive her backward. No sound. Just pressure so strong her ribs felt like they might crack. Myra's knees buckled. She almost dropped the core. Almost. She hugged it tighter and leaned forward, inch by inch, using her body like a wedge. Her legs shook violently. Her shoulder burned. Her hands felt like they were tearing. And then, a strange thing happened. The pressure didn't increase. It stayed steady. A constant. Myra's eyes sharpened. A constant meant a limit. A limit meant the machine had a maximum output. A maximum output meant she could beat it with patience. She advanced one step. Then another. Then another. Not fast. Not heroic in the way aliens liked to tell stories. Heroic in the way humans actually lived. Quiet, stubborn, unwilling to quit. At the door, she pressed her forearm against the panel while still holding the core. The lock read her presence and released. The silence field dropped behind her like a curtain. Sound returned in a flood, crowd roar, herald announcement, distant mechanical hum. Myra almost flinched from the noise. Then she steadied herself and set the core into the slot beside the door. Green light. Advance. The arena exploded with sound. Delegates stood. Council members exchanged urgent signals. Karu faces tightened into hard masks. Because the dispute was no longer just about a mining lane. It was about the meaning of fair. And now the last stage waited. The herald's voice boomed, louder than before, as if it needed volume to restore authority. Final trial. The council circle. Myra swallowed, flexed her bruised hands, and stepped forward. The final trial wasn't built to test strength. It was built to test judgment. Because the council's real fear wasn't that humans could fight. It was that humans could win. And still choose what kind of victory mattered. The council circle was a ring of white stone surrounded by hovering pillars of light. Each pillar displayed a symbol: law, mercy, truth, power, unity. In the center stood a single platform. On it, a device like a crown of metal branches, open and waiting. The herald spoke. In the final trial, the champion must resolve the dispute by council measure. Your mind will be tested. Your intent will be weighed. Your choice will be recorded as binding. Myra's chest tightened. This wasn't a fight. This was a trap with polite language. The Karu champion Brack Vaughan entered from the opposite gate. He looked bruised. His elbow still favored one angle. But his eyes were dangerous now, no longer amused, no longer arrogant. He had learned. Between them, a holographic map formed, an asteroid corridor glittering with marked claims. The disputed lane. The line that could start a war. A council member's voice echoed from the pillars. The human claim is contested. The Karu claim is contested. The trial winner must choose the resolution. A new hologram appeared. 3 options. Option 1. Human control. Option 2. Karu control. Option 3. Shared control. Myra stared at the choices. Simple. Too simple. That was when she noticed the fine print glyphs beneath each option. Hidden logic, council language. Human control meant Karu paid reparations and lost future voting privileges. Karu control meant humans lost their trading access for cycles. Shared control meant the council took permanent oversight and a large percentage of profits. Myra's eyes narrowed. The council wasn't just settling disputes. It was feeding itself. Brack Vaughan saw the same thing and his claws flexed. His species hated being controlled. He would rather lose a lane than hand power to the council. The pillars brightened. A pressure settled in the air, like the room was leaning in. Myra understood. The council wanted a choice that increased dependence. It wanted the champions to choose the option that would keep both species weaker. It wanted them angry at each other, not at the system. Myra stepped forward onto the central platform. The crown device lowered toward her head. A neural scanner. A truth extractor. She could feel the audience watching. She could feel the temptation to choose human control and end the dispute with a win that tasted sweet. She could feel the human delegation's silent hope. Then she pictured ships on fire. Families hiding in metal corridors. A lane of rocks turning into a battlefield. All because someone wanted to win more than they wanted peace. Myra lifted her chin and let the device touch her temples. The world became light and pressure and memory. It tried to show her victory. It tried to show her fame. It tried to show her the Karu kneeling. Myra breathed through it. Then she did what humans always did when a system tried to control them. She looked for the rule inside the rule. Her mind moved through the council's language like a locksmith's hands in the dark. Shared control wasn't only profit sharing. It was oversight. It was leverage. It was a leash. Myra opened her eyes. She stepped off the platform and faced Brack Vaughan. She didn't speak into a microphone. She didn't need to. The council circle translated her voice automatically, projecting it into every booth. This trial bans weapons, Myra said. But it doesn't ban thinking. The council pillars flickered, as if offended by the tone. Myra continued. You want us to pick a winner. You want us to pick a punishment. You want us to pick an option that makes us smaller. A murmur rose. Even the Karu delegates leaned in. Myra pointed at the hologram options. Those aren't fair choices. Those are traps. Council lights sharpened, bright as warning. A cold voice rang out. Champion Cade. Choose. Myra looked at Brack. Then she looked back at the pillars. I choose shared control, she said. A gasp ran through the human booth. A pleased stir ran through certain council seats. Myra lifted her hand. But not your shared control. The arena froze. Myra stepped toward the hologram and tapped the fine print glyphs. Your terms say shared under council oversight. You wrote that. So you can also rewrite it. The council voice snapped. That is not permitted. Myra's expression stayed calm. Then the trial isn't about fairness. It's about power. The pillars flared. A wave of pressure pressed down, trying to force compliance through pain. Myra's knees bent slightly. Her vision blurred at the edges. She kept speaking anyway. "Here's my resolution," she said. "Humans and Karu share the lane. But the Council gets no permanent cut. No permanent oversight. Only an audit window to verify mapping records and prevent fraud." The Karu delegates erupted into harsh, surprised sounds. Not anger. Something like respect wrapped in confusion. Myra turned to Brack. "Your people keep honor. My people keep access. Neither of us becomes the Council's property." Brack stared at her as if she had offered him a weapon made of air. Then slowly, he lowered his claws. He spoke, voice rough. "If you had chosen to crush us, we would have fought." Myra nodded once. "I know. And if you choose this, what do you gain?" Myra looked at the hologram lane glittering between them. She thought of humans on frontier stations, building lives in cold places. She thought of Karu hatchlings growing up hearing that humans were weak. She thought of the Council, fat on other people's fear. "I gain a future where we don't have to keep proving we deserve to exist," she said. The truth device on the platform flashed. It confirmed her intent. Not ambition. Not spite. Resolution. The Council pillars flickered. They tried to reject it. But the trial's own binding laws held them. The system had rules, and Myra had found them. The Herald's voice returned, forced and tight. Resolution recorded. Dispute settled under champion terms. For a moment, the arena didn't know what to do with itself. There was no clean domination. No crushed opponent. No simple victory speech. Then, slowly, sound rose, delegates speaking, translating, arguing. And inside that noise, a different current flowed. Respect. Not for human strength. Not for human violence. For human refusal to be used. Myra walked toward her delegation. Hands bruised. Shoulder aching. But steps steady. Behind her, Brack Vaughan watched her go. Then he did something that made his own people fall silent. He bowed his head once, short and sharp. A warrior's acknowledgement. The galaxy had banned weapons. And a human girl had still won. Not by breaking bodies. By breaking the trap. And from that day, the Council quietly rewrote its trials. Not because it wanted to. Because it had to. Because humans had arrived. And humans had a dangerous habit. They learned the rules. And then they improved them.